All set.
Thanks so much. I'll start again. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Items to be removed from consent agenda. If a board member wishes to remove an item on the consent agenda for further discussion, a motion to remove item from consent agenda must be made. However, once a motion and second are made for the consent agenda items listed below, simple questions can be asked regarding any of them, as you would normally for individual resolutions. Consent agenda. A, approval of minutes of 8/27/20 board meeting and the 9/2/20 special meeting. B, approval of personnel actions. C, acceptance of arrangements for appropriate special programs and services as recommended by the CSC CPSE. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Paul.
Second.
Second, Ariana.
Any questions regarding any of these items? Okay, can I have a motion to approve? Not a motion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 I almost had that down. Resolution. A, resolution for retention schedule. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Mamaroneck Union Free School District herewith authorizes the superintendent of schools to execute a settlement agreement and general release between the board and employee number 04838. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Paul.
Second.
Second, Ariana.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
C, resolution regarding a transportation appeal. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education uphold the prior determination of the superintendent for public transportation and denies the transportation appeal for a school bus for student number 1906-00068. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Ariana.
Second.
Second, Paul.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3, readoption of revised policy.
Rena, I'm sorry, can I interrupt? There was a resolution that you missed. You did 2 resolutions. There was one for a settlement agreement. Did we decide not to do that one?
I read it.
Oh,
Hold on, resolution.
It was resolution B.
I thought you did the retention schedule.
Oh,
No, I actually did resolution B. I never read resolution A.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, you were right. I read resolution for settlement agreement and general release. I missed the resolution for retention schedule. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Mamaroneck Union Free School District hereby adopts the retention and disposition schedule for New York Local Government Records, Schedule LGS-01, issued pursuant to Article 57A of the Arts and Cultural Affairs Law, containing legal minimum retention periods for local government records for use by all officers in legally disposing of valueless records listed therein, and be it further resolved that in accordance with Article 57-A, only those records described in Schedule LGS-01 will be disposed of after they have met the minimum retention periods described therein, and B, only those records will be disposed of that do not have sufficient administrative, fiscal, legal, or historical value to merit retention beyond established legal minimum periods. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Paul.
Second.
Second, Glantz.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Not sure how I missed that one, but thank you, Joanne. Moving on to policies. Readoption of revised policy 4526, acceptable use policy. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby waives the second reading of policy number 4526, acceptable use policy, due to the need to update said policy to set guidelines during remote learning. Be it further resolved that the Board of Education hereby adopts revised policy 4526, acceptable use policy, on the first reading in accordance with Board Policy 2410. Recommended action, that the Board of Education herewith adopt revised policy 4526, acceptable use policy, on the first reading in accordance with board policy 2410. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Paul.
All in favor?
No, second, need a
A
second.
second, sorry.
Can I,
Second.
Victoria, I'm sorry.
Wait, second.
Oh, second, Gladys.
Thanks. And before we move to approving it, Bob, do you want to speak on
Yes, I
that?
just, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to our community members watching as well. It's important to note that while the acceptable use policy has been in place and been revised over the last several years, it was important to add language in the current policy that emphasizes practices by both students and I would say parents around any type of videotaping of educational records really pertaining to remote instruction. So under the federal laws around privacy and protection of student records, it's important that we've added language, and we want to point out, and we'll continue to communicate and share this information to all of our students and parents, that parents and students are not permitted at any time to record, take photos, or post instructional delivery of instruction without permission from the teacher. And that is primarily, on one hand, to ensure that we as a district and teachers uphold student privacy laws around educational records. So on one hand, you have consistency about expectations for teachers who are operating what I would say under distance learning or blended learning conditions, to be mindful of our responsibilities as employees to uphold privacy rights. And at the same time, we're asking the same responsibility of parents and students. So I think we will certainly have a campaign this fall to continually remind our stakeholders that it is not acceptable to record, post, in some ways, or share instructional practices that are really begin from the district on a day-to-day basis. So I don't know if any board members have any questions, but we've added this language to comply with federal law, and we will take it seriously. We understand that this is a brave new world relative to remote learning, or what I would say blended learning. We'll have students who will be learning remotely on a day-to-day basis, and parents who are very interested in participating in their child's education, but we need everyone to uphold and respect privacy laws. And so this is what we've added to the policy.
Thank you, Bob. And I
Any
also,
questions from the board?
I'm sorry?
Any particular questions about the policy?
And I just want to point out that, you know, the board did receive this policy together with all items that we approved in our agenda, listed on board docs, and policies are available on the board website in our policies folder, excuse me, for everybody to see. Okay, can I have a motion to approve?
No, you did that.
No,
Sorry.
you're right.
All in favor.
in fit. Boy, oh boy. Thank goodness for Joanne. All in favor.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we will now turn to reports from the superintendent.
Thank you. First of all, I hope everybody enjoyed the long holiday weekend and the fall-like weather. We hope it continues throughout the month of September and beyond. I wanted to say that it was a pleasure last week to welcome back staff as part of our superintendent's conference days. And that continued today as we really, what I would say is front-loaded 3 superintendent's conference day to start the year. I would say that teachers and administrators have been using the time to reacquaint themselves with our school buildings, our classrooms. There's some, what I would say, remarkable changes to the learning environment that really certainly will transform or change how we deliver instruction this year. And so giving teachers the opportunity and time to focus on their professional transition back to school is critically important, as well as spending time to focus in on health and safety protocols as we anticipate the return of our students as well. And that's equally important. I also want to just acknowledge at this time, I would say that the hard work by our central administrators, our central office administration, all summer long, as well as our district-wide building administrators and our administrative team. It really, in so many different ways, speaks volumes to our, I would say, the group's professionalism, their commitment to prepare for the start of an unusual school year, unprecedented. And I want to just acknowledge and thank everyone for their commitment and effort to get where we are today. On Friday, late in the afternoon, I think about 5 o'clock, we opened up all the scheduling portals. So students, I'm sure, and parents eagerly awaited the opportunity to see their class schedules, see the teachers, and really that excitement and air that is we're accustomed to in terms of the start of a new school year. In a few moments, we'll have the opportunity to focus in on our remote learning orientation days that are going to unfold over the next few days. And I want to say that we certainly appreciate the opportunity to gradually roll into the school year. And we hope that we get the system itself and everyone excited, but also prepared to start and hit the ground running. So with that, I'll focus on majority of my remarks, I would say, in a few moments when we report out reopening plans. The last thing I want to say is I just want to thank Jeremy and Annie for their work, the new teacher orientation. It was, again, an unusual twist this year to have a virtual, remote, virtual, I would say, new teacher orientation. And so we'll talk about how that experience kind of rolled out, and certainly the opportunity to welcome new staff and orient them to our district, our community, and our school system. So thank you. So I don't know if you have updates from the Board of Education, or you would like us to go right to the presentation.
I think you're good with going right to the presentation. I don't believe we have any committee updates at this time.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with everyone. And the purpose of this evening really is to, in some ways, just provide an overview of our work to prepare for the reopening of schools. We're going to focus on a number of key initiatives, including, as I mentioned, new teacher orientation, the work highlighting the building preparedness, focusing on an update on our tech equity plan, and share some background information on the remote learning orientation and transition back to school days. So I'm going to start off, ask Annie just to update the board and community on our general enrollment, but really aligned to choice for hybrid or remote learning and homeschooling. Annie?
Sure. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm thinking that I think the tradition of this board meeting is to actually take a tour of the schools. I think the official purpose of this meeting is for the Board of Education to view and to certify that the schools are ready for reopening. And that really takes on a special import tonight. So in a few slides, you'll see some of the readiness, which is important now more than ever. But as Bob said, we wanted to open with a bit of an enrollment snapshot. Interestingly, our overall enrollment remains relatively stable, and Bob will say something about that in a moment. However, within that overall stable number, there are some interesting trends to note. We have had an outflow of students and families. In other words, children that were in our system through the 1920 school year who have left the system since the end of the school year, and then a fairly large influx of students coming into the system. So new students, new families. So while you're going to see in a moment from Bob a relatively overall stable number of enrollment of about 5,600, we did want to start by letting you know where things ended up after the relatively eventful and tumultuous events of the last few weeks. So that, over the summer, we received a lot of queries, many queries from families about whether, in addition to our stated intention of opening in a hybrid model, and there we were hovering somewhere between 33 and 50%, as everyone knows, based on the land projections and wanting to be as safe as possible, but also wanting to welcome as many kids back as possible in person as we could safely accommodate. We also had a fairly growing amount of interest in a full remote option. And so we did first an interest survey, which was not binding, but just to say, help us understand if this is really something that we should pursue. And then when the initial numbers from that survey suggested that we had large numbers of families in the community that were interested in a full remote option, when we went to offer that, we then sought a full commitment. And I think it's fair to say that there was a drop off. So from the initial interest survey to those families who actually committed, what you'll see is represented here on this slide. And you can see it's broken out by elementary, middle, and high, and where the dust settled in terms of hybrid. And by that, we mean children coming into school for as much of the day or the week as we can safely accommodate based on our classroom square footage and social distancing requirements. Then those children who chose with their families opted for a full remote option, meaning for this first phase of school reopening, these children intend to learn fully remotely at home. And then finally, a growing population of homeschoolers, families and students who exercise under Part 100 of the Commissioner's regulations, their opportunity to learn fully at home, guided not by Mamaroneck educators, but in fact by their parents or guardians. And so you can see the numbers there. And those numbers, in fact, are growing. We're in the process right now of reconciling, really going child by child, school by school, to make sure we've accounted for every single child in the system, whether they are enrolled with us in a hybrid or remote, or whether the parents or caregivers, guardians have taken responsibility for homeschooling. So you can just see these percentages. And I would say big picture, in terms of, although we had much higher interest from the interest survey in a full remote, where it has shaken out is somewhere between 13 and 17 with an average of 15% full remote interest. And therefore about an interest of 83 to 86% in the hybrid, and then with the homeschoolers filling out the remainder.
Any questions on the board? Okay. So just to follow up on Annie's comments about stable enrollment, historically on the first day of school, and this from our calendar was meant to be the first day of welcoming back students before the last minute change, we typically report out on our overall enrollment and make provide a comparison slide for prior years. And as mentioned, we have what I would say for the most part, stable enrollment. We've included the pre-K, UPK numbers just to give you a broad snapshot. But as you can see, elementary to middle, there has been a slight reduction in total number of students at both the elementary and middle school grades. I would say overall, the most significant change or drop off is the lower kindergarten registration or kindergarten cohorts. Last year we had well over 400, I believe, in 35 incoming kindergartens, and this year we were at 384, and that is consistent with what we had forecasted based on our multi-year trending. So the high watermark for this cohort of students was, I believe, 394, and we have about 384 students, so very close to our projections. Again, at the high school, a slight drop off of 10 students, but overall, as Annie mentioned, we saw a lot of mobility around, or movement of in and out in the system over the last 4 months. But in the end, we ended up approximately where we thought we'd be in terms of total enrollment. In speaking with Dr. Claire Reinhardt, we had about 160 new registrations over the summer months. That does not include the 384 kindergarten and pre-K families as well. So I would say characteristically typical of summer enrollment, anywhere between 160 to 200 students the last several years. But overall, I think you see a slight drop off in the middle school, as well as a change in the elementary that primarily from the change in kindergarten enrollment.
Bob, do we, go ahead, I hear, is that Christian?
Yes, just a quick question. Do we have a rough number as to the number of families that have left the district and any information on where they might have transitioned to? Was there a pattern that you did identify?
Well, I would say this, we had certainly a significant number of fifth graders transitioning to sixth grade that had opted for what I would say is historical, more so maybe though this year than before, to private schools. So that transition seems to be significant in terms of the total cohort of fifth graders that have moved on to the middle school. So that's one pattern, I would say. Certainly from March until I would say June, there was a transition of a number of families based on the pandemic and just changing family dynamics that certainly was atypical for that period of time. And some of those families obviously didn't return. But there's nothing significant. I would say I would be more than happy to ask Dr. Reinhardt to provide some form of summary of change in enrollment as well.
Thank you so much.
One other question.
Sure.
For the elementary school numbers, I know that this year the capacity is very different based on the hybrid, but were any of the individual elementary schools going to be, if this was a normal year in terms of how we're delivering the teaching?
Yes, I would say, we started this budget with 118 elementary sections. And we're starting school with approximately 114 sections. And so, Rob, I would say there's some change in certain grade level cohorts by school, neighborhood schools. So overall, we were able to find efficiencies around the actual, I would say, assignment of students in number of sections. At this point, Murray is, I would say, if it was a normal year where we offered full regular in-person learning, we would be at probably 32 sections, which is right about capacity. I would say that MAS right now, based on their space availability, again, in a normal situation, a regular year, we would be close to full capacity there in terms of classroom space. So just based on class size averages, I would say that Chatsworth would have 2 or 3 classrooms available, but their enrollment has been, I think, steadily consistent over the last several years of less than 700 students, moving away from what I would say is a high water mark of 740 to 50 students. So they've been below 700. And Central is off in 1 or 2 grades relative to the total number of students in sections. So nothing typically unusual, I would say that. But overall, we had anticipated over the next several years in terms of our demographic study that we would start to see some significant increases prior to the pandemic relative to what we thought would happen to the district in terms of growing enrollment. So I hope I answered the question. Okay, just moving on. I just wanted to give a shout out to Sylvia Wallach, Assistant Superintendent for Business Operations, for our Director of Facilities, Steve Brugge, all of our custodial and our maintenance staff that have worked incredibly hard all summer long to help us prepare our buildings, to certainly help us invest in improving our facilities in preparation for this fall. And we'd like to just give you both a visual, just an overview of the significant changes in our school, in our classrooms, what they look like, but also just touch on some of the improvements as well. So beginning with ventilation, we've talked about on several of our meetings, the board's support and our investment in improving ventilation or optimizing school ventilation. We have made a commitment, and it is underway, of having fresh air circulating in all of our school buildings and all classrooms 24/7 to ensure that we, through our HVAC systems, are have predictable fresh air circulating in all schools and all classrooms. The board, through the board's support, we purchased the iWave needlepoint bipolar ionization units. These are state-of-the-art air purifiers that are designed to pull out of the air pathogens, to deal with any kind of, would say, particles in the air, and to ensure that we have consistent, fresh, and purified air in all areas. And so our staff were able to, and complete full, what I would say, installation of these iWave needlepoint bipolar ionization units in all of our school buildings. It was a Herculean effort to get them up and running. And we are very proud of the fact that we believe when you focus on, from a mechanical engineering perspective, the use of these ionization units plus the MERV 8 filters, you are meeting that standard of MERV 13, which is certainly the highest standard recommended for school buildings in other public places. And so again, I think it's important to point off a level of consistency around air quality and an investment in the equipment that will ensure, I would say, the fresh flow of fresh air into our classrooms, as well as the purification process that's equally important. In terms of our hybrid learning model, we know that we have a AM and a PM session, and to ensure that we maintain a level of, I would say, cleaning and disinfecting, we have asked our custodial staff to be available throughout the day. We plan to implement what I would say protocols of 2 times per day, full cleaning and disinfecting of all of our touch surfaces. This will be continuous throughout the day in terms of doorknobs and all surfaces in classrooms. That in interim period between AM and PM, all of our classrooms will be cleaned. Our custodians will be using electrostatic sprayers that allow for what I would say is a timely cleaning and thorough cleaning of all of our school classrooms, but also using a hydrogen peroxide-based cleaning product that certainly meets EPA standards and has the required efficacy to kill SARS and COVID within 45 seconds. So we know that health and safety is our priority, and by investing in the equipment and the products to have a consistent level of cleaning and disinfecting, we feel we can in some ways minimize risk and provide our staff and students with clean school buildings and classrooms as well. At the same time, we have procured the necessary PPE and distributed the equipment and the resources in all of our school buildings. That includes masks, hand sanitizers, wipes, the polycarbonate desk barriers for our elementary classrooms and our teachers. We have equipped teachers with tape measures to ensure that we can organize our classrooms according to social distancing regulations. We feel in addition to our bathrooms and our common areas, having paper cups for water, that we are certainly providing teachers with the appropriate level of PPE to, again, minimize risk and have a level of consistency throughout. And we anticipate continuing throughout the year to see how we start school and make adjustments based on PPE as per the recommendations of our staff. Also, we've spent a lot of time with our building administrators plotting out, as well as the architects, social distancing for transitions, for arrival, dismissal, making sure that we invest in signage to remind students and staff of proper, what I would say, protocols and procedures, hand washing for wearing of masks at all times, to allow our younger students, and I would say in some cases our older students, to have visual reminders of where they can line up and remain in appropriate distance, to ensure that we support and help all of our students make good choices in our schools. To support what I would say is a more proactive effort for health screening. The certainly all of our schools will be equipped with and already installed what I would call 30 high level temperature scanners. We are asking that all students and staff that enter the building take a moment to have their temperature scanned. Typically what you will see once you come face to face with one of these units, you'll get a message to a reminder if you're not wearing a mask to wear a mask, and you will get a green for go and a readout on your temperature to ensure that you are safe to enter. We also have provided all the buildings with additional 60 handheld non-contact thermometers as well, to ensure that we have what I would say is an orderly flow and entry of students entering the building in a way that allows them to get situated and ready to learn. In addition, we have purchased an app for both our staff and families to provide a day-to-day self-assessment of their overall health condition. And so each day, beginning last week, our staff have filled out on a day-to-day basis the self-assessment of their health conditions. And again, ensuring that only those who are in good health arrive at school. And for our families, this will allow us to monitor what I would say and have historical data on absences. And in the event we need to work with the Department of Health around contract tracing, we'll be in good shape relative to day-to-day data for our schools. Any questions on just health and safety?
Bob, the daily health assessment, that also includes questions regarding domestic and international travel that might be subject to quarantine?
Yes, thank you, Rena. I appreciate that. Yes, we do ask a question that is included about any recent travel to both states that have been identified under New York for quarantine based on high level of community spread. So it's important that we've added that to ensure, again, as we have families who come and go based on personal plans and staff members as well, that we alert them to let us know if they have been subject to out-of-state travel.
Bob, I'd just like to say that the last two slides, I believe, is something that can go overlooked. And I just want to commend you and the team and Sylvia for the level of safety you're providing to our community and the bar that you're setting. So just to that, thank you. Safety first is something that you always say, and I'm in agreement 100%. A quick question: if somebody was to go in and it does spark off, concern with the temperature, how is the main office made aware of it? Could you walk us through really quick, just to inform our parents how that would look?
So yes, thank you, Christian. So we have certainly asked our building administrators to work closely with our aide staff and our campus supervisors to organize what I would say is a thoughtful arrival procedures for the start of school. And so we have designated specific entryways for all staff and students to enter. We intend to obviously supervise the person-by-person scanning of temperature. As I said, these monitors send off just a green go and a red kind of reminder if in the event someone had an elevated temperature. We've set up protocols to isolate individuals, to be able to certainly contact our health professionals and ensure that people who, whether it's a staff member or a student, that we will recheck their temperature to just confirm that it wasn't a false positive or some kind of system failure, and then follow the protocols based on what the results pretend. I'd say we last week had the opportunity, Barry Suman, who is our district COVID, plan advisor, we met with our health services professionals, with Dr. Mazzoni, with Dr. Ann England, our district physician. We reviewed what I would say is our full manual on safety protocols. And with our building administrators, we actually went through scenario planning. So we put out several scenarios about students and staff arriving, entering the school building, and then showing signs of symptoms relative to COVID, as well as students arriving outside the building whether it's off of a bus situation, to make sure that we're all familiar with the protocols. So I think preparation and planning is key, making sure that everyone is aware of our protocols, but also the communication that follows is something we've been focusing on and will continue as we welcome students into the building.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate the thoughtfulness.
So just to give you a sense of the dramatic change in our classroom environments, on the left, you'll see, I believe it's an elementary classroom. It might be, is that MAS or Chatsworth? I'm trying to, that is set up.
MAS.
MAS, thank you, to welcome students. On the right-hand side, you see, again, I think you'll see right there the temperature scan, the hand sanitizing machine. You see reminders about, this is a QR code that allows individuals coming in to complete the health questionnaire on their phone, health assessment, and then you see the decal on the floor. So lots to consider and organize. And again, thanks to all of our custodians, our maintenance staff, and our administrators for putting things in place. Again, we talked about the dedication of our custodial staff. On the right, you see one of our custodians with the electrostatic sprayer, which will in some ways allow us to cover a lot of ground in a short period of time. And the outside stickers to start of marking appropriate social distancing. I also want to point out, you'll see here I would say the curb safety, what I would say, I'm not sure, Sylvia, what we'd call those, but we installed in the spring, and it wasn't noticed at the time, both at the hummocks and the high school, barriers, safety barriers, to ensure that we continue to improve our perimeter security and safety at our schools, knowing that we have a flow of students who are walking in front of the main entrance. It was something that we had recommended as part of our safety plan. So that's an added benefit of the photo there. But there's Danny laying down the first of many decals for social distancing. So thank you. As I said last week, we welcomed our staff back. On the right, you'll see a department chair, high school department chair meeting in the library classroom. Everyone is wearing masks and appropriately distanced. And in the hallway, evidence of our new reality of what what we will see as and routinize as experiences of making sure that we stay far enough apart and we're wearing masks as well. This is an example of the barriers that have been purchased for elementary, for those, what I would say, specialists who will be working in close proximity with students, one-to-one in our students to ensure their safety as well as the safety of students. So thanks for our behavior specialists who are there and school psychologists who are presenting this barrier material that will ensure safety in all of our elementary classrooms. Annie, you want to just talk about this transition to remote learning?
Sure, just in keeping with our literacy stretch goal, teachers, librarians, reading teachers have been incredibly busy throughout the spring and over the summer, figuring out how to really maintain our commitment to voluminous reading in the COVID environment. So there was a tremendous amount of personalized book matching that went on through the spring and summer, using both the ability to physically match kids with books and in some cases physically mail those books to students. And we'll hear more about that, I think, Bob, probably at our next board meeting, but then also really take advantage of the electronic texts at our disposal and to expand our inventory through the school libraries and at the classroom level of electronic texts. So this is hand in hand with our digital equity program that we're going to hear about in a moment in terms of making sure that all children are really equipped with a suitable device for remote learning and for hybrid learning, because a key part of that is the ability to download electronic texts for independent reading. This just happens to be one sample from a third grade classroom where this teacher, Lorraine McGee at Murray, set up a Padlet, I believe, for her students last spring, which she is now refining for her new class this fall, where she's taken what would have been her physical classroom library and turned it into a virtual library where kids are going to have the same ability to preview texts that they might if they were book shopping in person and literally thumbing through texts in a bin. Now they're going to have that ability to preview these texts electronically and then make selections and download books for independent reading. So this is a large part of our commitment and partnership to sustain this stretch goal in the area of literacy, to make sure that all kids have, you know, fingertip access to the best texts for independent reading at all levels of the system.
Thank you, Annie. So this is a good transition to just providing an update on our tech equity plan and just overall investment in our network and improving or creating the conditions to support what I would call blended learning and distance learning. So again, through the support of the board and the community around our budget, we've continued to move forward on a multi-year plan to, I would say, upgrade our IT network to ensure that the backbone, or let's say is the resources that would support classroom instruction, are attended to. We now have a 4 gig connection, internet connection. It is a there are two gig, what I would say, connections. One, certainly something we've had in place for several years to ensure that we have continuity of access to internet in terms of the bandwidth and the that may result from a downed power line or circumstance. So to ensure that we have consistency, we have 2 connections. Those in combination now are load balanced. And so we are constantly ensuring a consistency of a 4 gig connection for both inbound and outbound internet use. That's critically important, especially when you think about that we're going to have our secondary level teachers simultaneously operating using webcams and using a lot of downloadable resources for both students and staff. This year, we continued in the process of upgrading or replacing end-of-life equipment. Our internal core switch were upgraded. We now have within our system a 42 expandable 100 gig system, that the connection between when our high school servers and our virtual servers and our Homix servers, which is really the backbone of our network. All of this improvement, which will provide what I would say the appropriate speed and deal with the demand, but at the same time, it's now positioning the district in the next several years to transition or meet the standard for the new Wi-Fi and the wireless Wi-Fi. So as we anticipate the rollout of the new Wi-Fi standard, our system will be prepared to eventually replace classroom wireless Wi-Fi across the system and take advantage of the new technology that will support the kind of teaching and learning we hope to have this year and beyond. At the same time, through our budget, we have purchased webcams for all our classrooms, microphones for teachers to amplify their voices for both in-person and remote learners, and purchase Chromebooks to make sure that all students who need a district device have access to a Chromebook. We intend to roll out a learning management system as we progress through the year to ensure the level of consistency and, I would say, efficiency around how students log in and access a learning portal, how teachers take full advantage of the resources of a learning management system. We purchased teacher license and students license for Zoom, something that we've been focusing on the last few days for our teachers around professional development, as well as continuing to use the Google Suite, the tools of Google Suite for education, as well as now purchasing Flipgrid licenses, which supports what I would say is the flipped classroom model. So a lot of investment, both on the hardware side, the network side, and what I would say software side, to prepare for this year of blended learning. So just to give you a sense of how busy we've been the last few days, I wanted to let the board know that we're in the process of distributing Chromebooks, as I mentioned, to students across the system. Thus far, we anticipate at the end of the process to have distributed somewhere between, I'd say, 1,600 to 2,000 Chromebooks. You can see here the number of Chromebooks requested per school. At the same time, for eligible families, we are providing Wi-Fi hotspots that will support this blended or remote learning process. I want to mention that it's part of the board's commitment to the virtual co-op program, which focused on digital fluency, that the STEM Alliance provided for students who met the proficiency by attending the program and meeting all the competencies, provided an additional 157 Chromebooks and Wi-Fi hotspots for co-op students. So we wanted to make mention to that, especially when a number of the students were from MAS, just identifying the total number of students who will have access to Chromebooks and Wi-Fi hotspots. Additionally, we're providing devices for our staff members as part of certainly what I would say is the Department of Education's mandate that there's a level of continuity, consistency for tech going forward. Annie, I'm going to ask you to kind of connect the dots around the virtual co-op summer program.
Sure. Well, as the board will recall, Meg Koifer and her team at the STEM Alliance were very nimble in anticipating that this summer's co-op camp was going to need to look radically different based on the circumstances imposed by COVID, but also to really prioritize those competencies that we were most going to be looking for with our young learners in a return to school that at that time, I'm talking about, April, May, June, when the program was being designed, that were very uncertain. And it turns out that really the planning was very prescient because we now find ourselves in this hybrid and remote environment. And I think that the skills and proficiencies that have been emphasized throughout the summer with the virtual co-op program are really going to bear fruit as we now look to open school. So we can see just some data here that there wound up being 181 campers, and we're going to tell you a bit about the vast majority of those co-op campers are children that are eligible for free and reduced lunch. So in terms of, targeting this intense support in areas of great need, the program was a big match. But under Meg's leadership, I think another notable feature of co-op, whether virtual or in-person co-op, has been the leadership development. So you see here 15 leaders in training where Meg and her team identified and recruited children that are rising in grades 7 and 8 to participate. And then the strength of this program was really the daily one-on-one virtual mentoring sessions. Jessie Dancy, elementary technology coach, and I had an opportunity to sit in or virtually participate in some of those virtual mentoring sessions over the summer, where we saw firsthand the power of walking and enabling kids one by one, one child and one caring virtual mentor at a time, to really build these tech competencies. And then a total of 11 teachers or educators who provided greater oversight and support of the virtual mentors, but also ran a variety of interest-based clubs. So we've learned a tremendous amount from this program that I think the board will be hearing more about at a future board meeting. This is a little bit of a teaser in terms of just sharing some of the initial findings with you. There were three overarching goals of the virtual co-op. One being, of course, digital fluency, and you'll hear more about that in a minute, but then also fostering social emotional support and connection, which we know is our #1 aim in bringing kids safely back to school in the next couple of weeks. And then finally, homework help and academic practice. This is just some data. And again, this is a bit of a teaser from what Meg and her team will be interested in sharing with the board. But we did see marked jumps in kids' digital fluency proficiency. You can just see here a sampling of the very granular tech skills that were targeted by virtual co-op, and then that were actually tracked in terms of pre and post data. And if you look at this list, you're also going to see a real correspondence with the kinds of things that we're going to be expecting kids to do throughout the fall and perhaps across the year as they engage fully in their classes in either hybrid or remote learning situations. And this is just the summative data, as Bob mentioned a minute ago, that out of the co-op experience and through the generosity of the STEM Alliance and the donors that the STEM Alliance recruited and partnered with, we had 157 children, 157 campers, co-op campers, who earned their Digital Equity Now package, which included a brand new Chromebook as well as a full year of unlimited high-speed internet. So when Bob showed you what our own district equity plan consists of, it's important to note that that's in full partnership with the STEM Alliance, and that the majority of these children are from the Mamaroneck Avenue district, are really showing a robust uptick of readiness for the digital and the remote and hybrid plans that we're launching this week.
So before I transition to your teacher, any questions about our tech equity plan or efforts? Okay, so Annie and Jeremy, you want to just touch on new teacher?
Sure.
Highlights?
I mean, Jeremy, you can chime in here, but this was a year like no other. We did, as I think returning board members know, our new teacher orientation is always a really high energy, multi-day event. Built into the contract is our ability to bring returning Mamaroneck teachers back for 1, 2, and 3 days, depending on their years of service in the district, 1, 2, and 3 years. So our brand new teachers are with us for 3 days, our second year teachers with us for 2, and our third year teachers with us for 1 day. And so although, as is summarized on this slide, we revisited and really built the orientation around perennial topics of great import, we also needed to be highly sensitive to the unusual circumstances of the COVID environment and the implications for each of these teachers in their launch of the school year within the next couple of days. So you can see here a listing of the numbers of faculty at each level and what some of the priority topics were. I can tell you that there was a combination of remote digital workshops as well as in-person opportunities for teachers to be in their schools, meeting with their administrative teams, seeing their physical instructional spaces, setting those spaces up, learning about all of our important technological systems, student information system, et cetera. And then Jeremy and I, and I'll turn it over to him, but we really aimed in the facilitation of these sessions, for at least for our part, and the building administrators did a great deal as well at the building level, but for the district level portions, we really sought to learn ourselves about how to facilitate, use tools like Zoom, and yet really maximize small group interaction in the same way that we frankly are hoping and expecting that teachers do with their students. So it was a steep learning curve for all, but we have a magnificently energetic and diverse group of new faculty that are joining us and or returning in years 2 and 3. And Jeremy, I'm sure you want to say more about that.
Thank you, Annie. I would just add a couple of pieces. We really did try to focus on what's unique about this year. And just like we would want teachers to adjust their learning instructional plans based on the context, we really tried to model that and tried to be very kind of metacognitive about that and talk about that. So a couple of examples are we typically do some work around the skillful teacher and personal relationship building. And Annie actually surfaced a really great blog post by John Safier about what personal relationship building with your students really means in this era of COVID. And we just thought that really resonated with us. And another thing that I really have to credit Annie with coming up with the idea was we took it was an opportunity, as sad as it was, the death of Chadwick Boseman and some of the tweets and some of the some of the really provocative thoughts that were out there about what that meant to children of color. And we took that opportunity to really completely revamp a big part of our second year teacher training. And I thought it worked really well and helped to really surface some really important issues around race and about our awareness of children of color. So those were a couple of real highlights and things that I appreciated, and I think that the teachers really took a lot out of.
Thank you, Jeremy. So I just want to transition to focus on the next few days and the work that is underway, but will continue with our faculty, our students, and parents as we move closer to a full transition back to school. So thanks to what I would say the incredible work of our district technology coaches, Jess Dancy, our elementary instructional technology coach, and Mike Sammartano, our secondary level. We felt it was critically important knowing that we certainly aren't in any way understating the complexity, the anticipated complexity of what it will take to provide what a thoughtful instruction in a hybrid and I would say blended learning environment, that we thought it would be critically important to invest in the appropriate groundwork and preparation for all of our stakeholders to put our best foot forward beginning next week. And so over the course of our superintendent's conference days, certainly again today and over the next 2 days, we've certainly asked Jesse and Mike to put together what I would say is a thoughtful focus on skill development and professional learning experiences that will really position our teachers and our students really in some ways to take full advantage of this transition to what I would say is a unique learning experience. And so Mike and Jesse organized a series of what I would say 2 days worth of self-guided asynchronous tech skills development for students, an introduction to parents focusing on digital citizenship, on efficient and effective teaching for our teachers. And it really is an opportunity for students to kind of reacquaint themselves with a range of what I would say learning tools, tech learning tools that will support what I would say is their full engagement in learning, a level of independence, as well giving our teachers the needed time, I would say front loading time to acquaint themselves to what is it going to mean to be tethered to a webcam and to deliver instruction to students in front of them physically, but also students who are part of the classroom experience remotely. And so the complexity of this experience warranted a slowing down, so to speak, of allowing people to experiment over a period of time with the idea of the goal that the end of the week will allow all of our stakeholders to kind of test out or practice their mettle, to introduce themselves both in a remote setting, but also to try out in what I would say is a low stakes day, this kind of welcoming back to school. And so when we first kind of thought about this and planned out the adjustment of the calendar, we weren't sure what we could pull off, so to speak. But I have to say that Jesse and Mike did a remarkable job in creating organic workshops and mini courses for our staff. They've been holding all school faculty meetings, both at the elementary and secondary level, to kind of highlight the list of tools to help and provide real-time support, but now have positioned our students to really get up to speed, review, and become comfortable and knowledgeable about a host of skills. So over the next 2 days, parents and students will have an opportunity to kind of dive into this remote learning orientation with the goal by Friday of going live, so to speak, with both in-person transitions back, as well as synchronous learning and introductions of students and teachers to their new classes, providing overviews and so on and so forth. So Friday, September 11th will be the culmination of effort by all of our stakeholders. And I'm going to share with you just a summary of what the focus will be each day. So this is just an overview, or in some ways, an overlap of the various stakeholders' areas of focus over the next 3 days. And as you can see, for our buildings, it was to kind of start off with focusing on device distribution, going over the protocols for safety, and we'll end up with welcoming students in person, having teachers feeling comfortable in this transitional week with how to welcome back students in a safe and orderly environment. From the perspective of teacher preparation and PD, teachers have been really highly focused on becoming familiar with Zoom, and as Annie mentioned, all of the bells and whistles and the various resources within Zoom to organize large group, small group, and individualized instruction. They are organizing their Google Classrooms at all levels. In some cases, creating Google Classrooms. I believe our specialists, the elementary level, are now fully going to commit to the Google Classroom environment, as well as preparing to welcome students back by posting welcome back messages, overviews of courses, and so on, culminating, as I mentioned, on Friday with a live event. Students have the self-guided skill development. One of the things that we're happy about is that Mike has organized for our secondary level students, both at the middle school and high school, a concentration on applied Google's digital skills. So students will really be able to apply what they learn and know in a very controlled setting in helping them prepare, similar to what co-op camp students went through this summer, where they actually had to develop some level of independence with a lot of different tech schools. So this is an example, just a summary of the elementary. This is what it looks like, the overlap for our various stakeholders at the secondary level. We're really quite proud of what we've organized and put in place. I want to say that this afternoon I had an opportunity to just share a phone message to all of our families, reminding them that tomorrow is the launch of our remote learning orientation. We've created on our district website a section for our parents and our students to go to in order to launch into a host of activities. And I believe I could probably go live just to show there are a host of extension activities for students who like to go deeper, as well as parents, a lot of videos. I want to give a shout out to our district translator, Liz Paras, who, working closely with Jesse, has put together a library of parent videos in Spanish for our Spanish-speaking families, so they can equally access and engage in supporting their student in this remote learning domain. So lots to share, lots to talk about, lots to report about, and we're very happy and excited by the work that was organized, and hopefully will go well the next 2 days. And so, as I said, we look forward to Friday's what's called dress rehearsal. It will include in-person orientation for students who are transitioning to new school buildings. We're going to welcome all of our kindergarten students, our incoming 6th graders to Homics, our 9th grade students and 10th graders as well. Teachers will be expected to, prior to the 11th, to organize classroom materials and have everything ready in their Google Classrooms, and conduct on Friday virtual meetings, what we call synchronous learning for teachers and students in all grades. I know that at the middle school and high school, students will go through their schedules with teachers, an abbreviated schedule. So it really is an opportunity to kind of go live as well. And I thought it was a nice way to kind of welcome everyone back to see and allow teachers become familiar, introduce themselves to their students, and talk about the summer. We're going to launch our advisory program at the middle school and the 9th grade and 10th grade on Friday. And so it really is going to be a full day of activities for all of our students. Nora, you want to talk just briefly about welcoming our special class students across the system as well?
Sure. You know, I mean, that basically says it. So our students with the most significant learning needs will start back to school on Friday. Daily for full day, and that's building on the success we had this summer with our extended school year program that we offered at Mamaroneck Avenue School.
So thank you. So we're certainly excited. We will have the opportunity to report out to the board at the next meeting about how this all will come together, and certainly hope that parents will be learning side by side with their children. as we get ready to officially welcome back students to school over the next couple of days, and certainly everyone coming back to school on Monday to launch our hybrid model as well. So
Bob, if I could add one more thing I wanted to mention is that there is a parent Zoom meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. for all parents, all three levels of parents of students with IEPs. And it's specifically to talk about the different ways in which the special education services are embedded into or overlaid in the current hybrid schedule. So we invite you to join in.
Yeah, and I want to say that I do think this kind of buildup or a rollout of the school year, that we really felt it was important to invest time and energy to support our teachers, who again will walk into very complex learning environments, and to give them a sense of really coming back into school buildings and places where they have not been since last March, to understand the difference of what that learning environment will look like, and to settle into kind of routinize the practices and preparations and think through how they will approach their craft over the certainly next several weeks and the coming school year in light of a lot of different challenges. And so we think this is going to help us in the long run. And so we appreciate our parents understanding and certainly appreciating that sometimes you make decisions about how to start and make those last minute changes, what we think will be for the best. So I don't know if any questions from the board members or any comments that you would like to add to this. I just want to give a shout out to Jesse and Mike for incredible effort. They've put in just hours and hours to organize this for all of our students district-wide.
I
I don't
Annie,
have a question. I would like to call the administrators and all the teachers our heroes. We are still fighting we are still at war. We are still fighting an invisible enemy. When I was reading all this presentation this afternoon, I see how prepared we are for this fight. And I really want to thank you for all that tirelessness, all that effort. I know it being hours and hours. I know this situation really pushed everybody's limits to think the unthinkable, to work with the uncertain, to a lot of things that we were necessary to put this and to open our school. So thank you very much for giving the safety feelings to our kids and our parents to come back to school. I'm really impressed with whatever I see, and when I was reading yesterday also the healthy and safety protocols, all the details, everything that was thinking there, it's amazing. So thank you very much, and you guys are our heroes. You did an awesome job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gladys. And I do want to say, again, I give tremendous credit to our building administrators, the partnership with the MTA. One of the things that stands out in my mind when you think about we're about to roll out a secondary level advisory program, I remember that the beginning, the genesis for that really was our work at the D-Lab, where we brought our parents, students, teachers together, administrators together, and we thought out of the box relative to what would we want school to look like and what is important to us based on our guiding principles and what we could accomplish under these conditions. So there is this connect the dots that really began back in early spring that has really led us to where we are today. And it's been great teamwork and partnerships all around.
And I just want to add to build on what Gladys had to say, what you had to say, Bob, is that, this school year, it starts, as I said to the teachers at Superintendent's Conference Day, there's always a mix of apprehension and excitement. And, this year we know that there's a little bit more apprehension, but still mixed with excitement as we embark upon the school year. And they're going to be unprecedented challenges. That word unprecedented gets used a lot for our teachers, administrators, students, and our families. And, I want to thank our district families for their patience and understanding as we navigate through all of these challenges, understanding that there are going to be bumps in the road and frustration, but the understanding that we've that so many families have expressed to us, and I hope to you, is very appreciated. And the summer is typically a time that staff, administrators, everybody who works in schools has some time to recharge. And this was not a typical summer. And the entire administrative team under your leadership, our building leaders, the student support leadership team, nursing coordinator, tech coaches, district social workers, translators, everybody was working double and triple time to plan for the opening of schools. And that work, clearly, comes through in all of the plans and all of the information that's posted on the website. You went through multiple, or our building principals went through multiple iterations of schedules, reviewed building spaces, how they're used, established and reviewed health and safety protocols, building level meetings, receiving and sending what must have been thousands upon thousands of emails, and dealing with so many other complexities involved with opening up a school for 5,589 students. And you've done all of this while being batted around by numerous executive orders, rapidly changing requirements and protocols from New York State, and some as recently as 12 o'clock today, when you learned there was a 1:30 meeting that you had to participate in. As you said so clearly, we also want to express our gratitude to our custodial staff and building crews who helped set up classrooms, adhering to all the new spacing requirements, which we saw in the presentation, move out furniture, move in furniture, and ready themselves for all the new cleaning protocols. And just thank you so much. We don't take any of this for granted. We know how fortunate we are. To our teachers, administrators, custodians, all of our staff, thank you. Thanks for your commitment, your willingness and ability to meet a challenge, and to our teachers for really being the type of teachers that our students really need right now. That connection, we know how valuable and important it is. And finally, we also know how many families in this community have faced both health and financial challenges, and some have even lost loved ones. Our hearts go out to them. We have seen so many in this community step up and help, whether it was in the form of sewing masks, grocery shopping for elderly neighbors, packing and distributing many, many meals, grocery shopping for elderly neighbors, providing art kits, delivering meals. We're a community and will be a community going forward. We saw how strong our community is. And, thank you to all of our families, our community members. I'm very proud, as we all are, to be a part of this community and to be a part of this district, and just want to express our gratitude. And we do hope that you will get some sleep, because you all clearly don't need many hours of sleep to deal with all of this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rena.
Thank you, Rena. Any questions, comments about anything that we presented?
Yes, I just have one question, Bob. I'm just bringing it back a few slides. Well, first of all, as a parent with a full house, I really appreciate the way we're going into this school year, with everyone taking their steps and getting used to the waters and how they are. But I did hear a lot from parents saying how they really appreciated the online mentors during the camp program, and how that really supported them through the process. And I know that model is proceeding into the school year. Has there been conversations about that model continuing for the most neediest of students that might not be able to afford that sort of support?
So thank you, Kristen, for bringing that, just reinforcing the importance of that experience. I want to just update the board and the committee on related topic. One, there's been conversation, I believe, with Dr. Oliva and the STEM Alliance, conversations with Sylvia about using title funds to continue that program and that partnership. In addition to that, the PTA, and again, through Jess Dancy's leadership, through Jackie Emmett's work, have organized, and I think we had a picture, or I was going to, of hoping to get today, of our high school students, our National Honor Society students, and our tech students who are going to serve as help desk support for their fellow students, as well as mentors. And this has been today as part of our elementary tech distribution. We had high school students who signed up to support the onboarding process of tech distribution and just ensuring password setups and so on. And so we're actually going to branch out and expand what I would say is the just-in-time support or ongoing sustained mentorship, both with partnership with STEM Alliance, we hope, as well as our own students serving and modeling the kind of mentorship for their younger students across the system. So we're very excited by that. And we're off to a great start. So thank you.
So just two things to that. Number one, Meg rocks. And number two, that's a game changer. Great job. Thanks.
Any other questions by the board members or just comments?
We just want to echo the thank yous that have been said. I think what you guys have put out is nothing short of miraculous, given the times we're living in, and just feeling incredibly, incredibly grateful to all the building administrators and everyone and all of you that made this all possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say, and Rena, you touched on it, it's important that we proceed with a level of patience and understanding, and I would say grace. We are all still working under these difficult conditions, and we all want what's best for our children, our students of this district, and families. And we know that as much as the planning and preparation that's been accomplished, that there are going to things that are going to happen that they're going to further challenge the system, individuals, school buildings, teachers, individual families as well. And we need to stay together and work together, and in some ways respect one another in such a way that we help all of us succeed. And so it's really important that we recognize that things are unprecedented, but if we kind of keep an open mind and remain in some ways grounded, that it will be a successful school year. So there's a lot of excitement and energy despite all the challenges. So thank you.
And I'll echo what everyone said. I think also I definitely want to commend the building leadership, because they took the brunt of this and did so much work, and were really the frontline connections with the community. And I think they did an amazing job at not only supporting this system and helping implement it, but also being there to answer the questions that came from the community. So kudos to the building leadership for all 6 buildings. And of course, Bob, this is certainly it's a reflection of your leadership, and I think that's an important recognition that has to be made. So thank you, and thank you to everyone that's been involved. I couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We're looking forward to seeing the children arrive at our schools and just hearing the excited stories from parents about that first official day of school as well. Okay.
Any other board questions or comments? Okay.
It looks like we do not have any community member questions at this time.
Okay, well, I'm just going to announce, time for community questions. Thank you, Debbie. Debbie Mineta, our district communication director, is handling and having individuals in to ask their questions. You'll see the chat feature. If you click on it to raise your hand, Debbie will then allow you in to ask your own question. So please be sure that your audio is enabled. And of course, as always, you can forward questions to the board using our board email address at board@mamkschools.org. I'm also briefly going to read our our policy 1230 on public participation at public meetings. Anyone who wishes to speak, we ask that they state their name and address and any organization they're representing. Any group or organization wishing to address the board must identify a single spokesperson, and members of the public are asked to keep their remark to 3 minutes in order to ensure opportunity for others to speak. The board will not permit in public session comments involving individual district personnel or students. Persons wishing to discuss matters involving individual district personnel or students should present their comments or concerns to the superintendent of schools during regular business hours. All speakers are to conduct themselves in a respectful and civil manner. Obscene language, libelous statements, threats of violence, and statements advocating racial, religious, or other forms of prejudice will not be tolerated. On matters which are controversial, the board vests in its president or other presiding officer the authority to terminate the remarks of any individual when the individual does not adhere to established rules. And thank you for your patience for listening to our procedures and policies. Debbie, do we have anybody waiting to ask a question?
We do not.
I'll wait another minute just in case anybody is trying to use the feature.
We did have a nice attendance this evening. About 75 people, it looks like. And that's actually just people on Zoom, but other people were watching on LMC's website.
That's great.
Okay, we just have one question now.
No, go ahead.
Gabby has requested to speak. So I have asked her to unmute herself.
Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening, rather. My name is Shania Bailey, mother of Gabriella Bailey. We are new in the district, and I think I'm supposed to receive portal parental email and access, a password thing. So I'm not sure how to go about that to do the orientation and stuff tomorrow. Assumingly it's not done, but hopefully it will. What will happen on Friday if it's not completed by us? I'm not sure.
Thank you, Gabby, and welcome to the district. I would say two things in response. One, we will have, and certainly we can support the process to ensure that your child or children will have access to the materials for the 2-day self-guided, what I would say, remote learning activities. I'm certainly more than happy to help you tomorrow morning, first thing, just to point you in the right direction, have someone walk you through that process, or certainly your student. At the same time, I would say that all of our building administrators principals are sending out a schedule of activities for Friday. So I can point you in the right direction based on where your child or children are assigned. So if you'd like, certainly you can call my office tomorrow morning if you have time available, and be more than happy to help.
How do I obtain your number? Or I'm sorry.
So I don't mind telling you, the superintendent's phone is 914-220-3007. So my administrative assistant who is here participating, Joanne Rice, will be happy to take your call, and we'll see if we can help as soon as possible.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Certainly. It's a pleasure.
Bob just gave out the bat number. Good job.
Okay, we have one other person that has just requested to speak, and that is Rachel Horan. So I am allowing her to speak.
Good evening. I just wanted to make a very short comment in thanks to the incredible work that's being done right across the district. I wonder why consistently our leaders and administrators are called building administrators and not school administrators. I think now more than ever, let's recognize that the school is the student body, the faculty, the administrators. It is not about the walls.
Rachel, I thank you for noting that. It may just be a habit, but I will refer to them as school leaders, school administrators from this moment on. They are a tremendous group of school administrators, and I would say leaders, educational leaders, who've been incredibly thoughtful in their leadership and their connection to their staff and families. And so thank you for pointing that out. Henceforth, we'll talk about school leaders and school administrators. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Rachel.
And now we do have Dora, who has asked to speak. I do not have a last name. Dora.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dora, and I am the same like another lady. I have my daughter. This is the first time she's going in a high school, but I need to know where I apply for her computer, because I went there in the school today, but no, nobody helped me to pick a computer, but the lady said I need to apply in the same like I do with my son, but I don't know where is the link. I can't find it, so I don't know, can somebody help me to pick a computer, because she don't have a computer to start the school Friday, and I don't know which is the time, how she start, and really I don't know nothing.
Well, Dora, again, if I can ask you to give a call tomorrow to my office, 220-3005. I wanted to point out that last week, through our parent survey, last week we, at the secondary level, we organized the first round of our deployment of tech devices for middle and high school students. Today, we transitioned to elementary, and we recognize that there are a number of families who are interested in having a district-issued device. And so we're going to kind of ensure over the next week that all families and students who need devices have one available. So if you call tomorrow, we can organize a time for us, for one of our staff members to work with you and is your daughter, I believe, to help her prepare for the high school transition.
Okay, the phone number is 220, you said, I'm sorry?
220-914-220-3007. 3007.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dora. Now I'm going to ask Michelle Talby to unmute herself, if you can, to ask your question.
Yes. Hi, thank you. Good evening. I am a mother to two children at Central Elementary School, and I received communication from the school. My children are in the hybrid model. They're in the AM session, and I had received communication from the school that should the children have to quarantine due to exposure, they would not be able to participate in school remotely because of the way things had been planned specifically for certain pods and so forth. And so I'm just a little concerned because if my kids are asymptomatic, but they have to, they might have been exposed and they have to stay home in excess of caution, then they're going to be missing 2 weeks of school. And it seems to me unnecessary that they would have to miss that instruction if there could be some kind of accommodation in those kinds of situations.
Annie, do you want to touch on that or you want me to respond?
Sure. I mean, obviously, our goal is to support all children to the extent possible. I think that right now we have all of our elementary teaching staff fully assigned to 2 pods, a morning pod and an afternoon. In some cases, that's a morning hybrid or in-person pod and an afternoon in-person pod. In other cases, that might be, one in-person and one hybrid pod. And then in some other cases, possibly 2 hybrid pods. So what we are committing to, Michelle, is of course, the same thing that would be true if we were in-person school, that if a child has to remain home for illness, or in this case, quarantine, the classroom teacher has and accepts responsibility for keeping that child up to date, up to speed with all of his or her assignments that, come out of that class, or in this case, that pod. The challenge is that it's not possible in all cases. It sounds like it should be, but it's not necessarily in practice possible to just transfer, for lack of a better word, that child from an in-person pod to a remote pod, because all of our caseloads right now in those remote pods are full. I hope I mentioned this early on when we were talking about the business of trying to accommodate every family's wishes between the hybrid and the remote, but it really got granular at each building level, at each grade level, child by child, of looking at the numbers and really trying to work within our, our very tight budget to ensure that we had favorable pod sizes. So long story short, there's not any flexibility of saying that if a child's circumstance changes, how do we move that child across pods without creating, lots of disruptions across the system? So that said, each child's teacher, as always, is the first line of defense of saying, this child is in my pod, is on my caseload. I know him or her as a learner. I'm going to work to provide continuity of teaching and learning and assignments during, whether it's an illness or in this case, a quarantine. But it's just not possible based on the way our caseloads are for us to assure that a child who's in a hybrid pod could be seamlessly assigned to a remote pod should a quarantine be necessary.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, at least knowing that I can work with the teacher to help them keep up with things is, still an option. I didn't know if they were just going to be counted absent and that was the end of it. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And this is a situation that we anticipate. I mean, we have the same question that you have, Michelle. It's just that right now, we really have stretched ourselves to accommodate the community interest in both the hybrid, which we were originally prepared to offer, and as well as the full remote option. And in some cases, we're looking, we have a very granular spreadsheet of looking at pod enrollment, in-person and remote, at each grade level across the system. But we just can't issue a blanket guarantee to a parent that there could be that, that transfer. But for sure, classroom teachers, as they always are, have responsibility and accept that willingly for the kids on their caseload to try to keep them current and up to speed with learning, no matter what the, what situations present themselves.
Okay, thank you. That's very reassuring. And I also just want to say that I appreciate the complexity of trying to get siblings in at the same time. And that was a huge relief to me for planning. So I appreciate all the effort that went.
Sure. And just one final note while we're talking about it, I'm assuming, Michelle, that your question was specific to the elementary level, because at the middle and the high school level, based on the availability of webcams, if we have children that have to come in or out, that flexibility is much more fluid at the middle or high school. That that the model at both levels hinges on kids being physically present in school for a portion of time and then learning remotely at home for the other portion of time via the webcam. So at Homix or the high school, if that were the case, then the child would be able to just continue his or her learning, but fully by webcam in the event of a quarantine or an illness. So I should have mentioned that at the outset.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. We do have 2 other questions that have come in. Diana Levitt has asked to speak. So here you go, Diana.
Thank you for taking my question. I have a question about the role that was previously held by April Francis, and when or if you have filled that role. It seems like a very critical and important role to have someone focused on diversity and equity in the district. And have you filled that role?
Dr. Barker, would you like to provide a response?
Sure. We have gone through a search for that role, and we are committed to maintaining that. We feel like the work is very important. We have not at the moment identified an individual to do that work, but again, the board and the district are very committed. As a matter of fact, we just reposted the position again last week to continue the search. So it is there, and we are committed to finding someone, perhaps internally, who can fill that role, because again, we do believe it's essential and we are committed to it. So we do envision very shortly having someone appointed to that position.
And just to add on to that, April Francis's role at Homix was Director of Student Life. And so that is a position that we are hoping to maintain even as we face a very challenging budget landscape, as anyone following these board meetings knows. So Director of Student Life is that is one, that is essentially what April's position was. I think, Diana, probably your question also touches on the district's commitment to the equity initiatives that April was very involved in her capacity as Director of Student Life, but also as the co-coordinator of the district's equity team. So we're looking at really partitioning those roles and looking at ensuring that the district's equity team has robust leadership. I think that the upcoming Board of Education meeting, the next meeting, which is September, I think 22nd, someone can correct me, but I think, would that be 2 weeks from tonight? At that meeting, the board and the community is going to hear an update, including from April herself, but also from members of the district equity team about that work, the status of the draft district equity plan, and the many prongs that work takes in the coming 2021 school year. So I think we have to think about both prongs, and April, as capable as she is, was sort of straddling two very important roles in the system, one being Director of Student Life at Homix and the other being the coordinator of our district equity team. And we're looking at partitioning those responsibilities and hopefully retaining both in a robust model, but cognizant of the challenging budget times that we find ourselves in. So I think on the 22nd, there will be an update that will include April and the members of the district equity team about the equity plan and the status of the many prongs of that. And then information will also be forthcoming about the position of Director of Student Life and whether we have internal or external candidates or applicants that we are going to recommend for that important role at the middle school.
Thank you, Debbie. Do we have any additional individuals in the waiting to ask a question?
We have Lisa Flores, and here she is.
Hi, thank you for taking my call, and thank you for what's obviously been a great deal of work to get the district ready for opening in a few weeks. I apologize, you may have answered this at the end of your response a few questions ago regarding whether or not a student has to be quarantined. My son's going to high school coming in the next few weeks. If the child, him or herself, is not sick, but there's someone in their classroom that is sick or that is potentially sick, and the classroom has to quarantine, I wasn't clear at the high school level, will those children who are not sick but are quarantined because they may have been exposed, will they have the ability to still participate fully in school at the high school level and not miss out on 2 weeks? Because potentially that could happen a few times of a particular class being quarantined. Thank you.
As we provided just information a few minutes ago, at the secondary level, because we have webcams and the ability to have students in real time, in person and remotely, in the event that a group of students in a class or a teacher would need to be quarantined, we have the ability to deliver and transition to full remote instruction. So it is a different structure or conditions at the secondary level based on possible or likely scenarios in response to a positive COVID diagnosis or a need to quarantine. I think it's point out, we do have protocols in place. We can't assume that if we are faced with that challenge, that it will be an entire class that will be determined in consultation with the Department of Health to quarantine. So we are anticipating and preparing for and certainly supporting the opportunity to have continuity of instruction, whether it's through remote means or in person, whether it's partial or full class.
Thank you very much. And thank you for indulging me that I missed the answer previously. Thank you.
Okay, Diana Levitt has raised her hand again and asked to speak.
Rena?
One more second. I just want to be sure, since Diana got to ask a question, could you tell me if there are other individuals in the waiting room right now?
No, there are not.
Okay. Diana, I just want to direct your question if it has to do with the district reopening plan or anything that was shared this evening. If not, I'm going to ask you to hold your question and to just email the board. Bless you, whoever that was.
Sorry, that was one of my kids.
Oh, well, bless you to one of your kids, Christian. Diana, were you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I guess
Okay.
I'll email you.
Great, thank you.
Rena, I do have a couple of things I wanted to touch on just from the community outreach.
From community outreach regarding.
Just from some of the comments we heard here tonight. Really quick, I think going back a couple of calls in terms of looking for coverage if someone is out, I think it also really places value on what our model is for our remote learners. And I think that, as a parent that has children going remote because I have a senior citizen in the home that has conditions, it really places the value on this remote model that people aren't transient in and out, because virtually it is important to establish those relationships online. So I know that I can speak for many parents that really do appreciate it. And I think our model for hybrid is so strong that parents are trying to follow through with that, unless, last resort, they just can't because of a family member or something of that nature. So that really speaks to the model that we do have. And also in terms of our district, I just wanted to share out personally that, our struggle for equity has to be more than one person. And I think we are moving in that direction. So for that, I also think it's important to find the right people for those two envisioned partition positions. But again, thank you very much for the work in the presentation today.
Are there any other questions?
No, there are not.
Okay. With that, I have to go back. I apologize to board docs, because if there are no more questions and comments from our community or board regarding what we discussed tonight, I'm going to move to announce, excuse me, our future meetings. Our future meetings, I apologize, I had to transition from.
I'd be more than happy. I have it in front of me if you'd like.
I just got it. So Tuesday, September 22nd at 7 p.m., we're going to have presentation of the District Equity Team Strategic Plan on Tuesday, October 6th, which will be held via our Zoom platform in accordance with the extension of the Governor's Executive Order. Tuesday, October 6th, 7 p.m., we have a Board of Education study session. Unless otherwise noted, all meetings will be held via the remote platform unless the Governor's Executive Order is not extended, in which case we will be meeting in the high school auditorium and be socially distant. and we will have limits on attendance. Tuesday, October 20th, 7 p.m., Board of Education meeting. And as I said before about the format the meeting may take. With that, thanks to everybody once again, to our educational leaders. And can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Paul.
Second.
Second, Christian.
Thanks, Christian. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good night, everyone. And LMC, thank you. And Debbie Mineta and Joanne Rice, thank you for getting this all set up together with LMC to be sure that it worked smoothly. So
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.